Okay, welcome to the stream again, guys. I'm going to take you through probably just a quick, short promo video for a recent client, and it is essentially a brand new project. What it'll entail? It started out as a video that we thought we might do like a tutorial thing, but we've sort of realized that clients aren't really, well, certainly not consumer clients, aren't really necessarily after videos that are instructional. I don't think that's really what you want to be doing with your clients very often if they have consumer customers. So in this case, a hair salon. So what we're going to do is go with a brand new project. I'm going to show you the workflow that I've kind of discovered with this type of video production. So first things first, I'm going to mention very quickly with Premiere, it's a good idea to start with a fast hard drive. So the M.2 drives, I think it's the M2 SSD drives, the ones that direct connect to your motherboard are the fastest and the quickest. So one of the things I like to do, and I've got a couple of videos here, but we're just going to start by creating a new folder. And we're going to call this just the client will do. And this will call the, the Terrence, and we'll call it the June shoot. And then June, and this was the model's name. Now, a couple of things that I've pointed out in the past is you can use Prelude to ingest footage, but I've already done that. So normally though, I would literally record, let's say, on an Atomos. So I'm giving you what I actually do on a shoot and what I've found works. Although in this case, I accidentally shot on SD cards. By that, I mean, I didn't bring my Atomos and my SSD drives. But generally speaking, I like to use an Atomos Ninja Flame or something similar, record on an SSD drive direct in DNX HD. The reason is because, believe it or not, even though the file size is larger, like a DNX quality video is larger in terms of file size, you'd think then that would mean that it would render slower and things like that. It's actually not the case. It actually is quicker for PC Windows. And of course, the Atomos lets you record in 422 ProRes for if you're an Apple user. Now, in this case, we're going to go in here and we're going to grab that and this. So we're just going to literally, what I like to do is just cut it. Just go cut. Then go back to the drive here and go paste, right? Now, the reason I do that is simply because what we want to do is get the project onto a very fast hard drive. And I can tell you right now, in terms of workflow and production, stay away from 3.0 USB hard drives. So do not get yourself into a habit of working off an external hard drive generally. You're far better off using a built-in hard drive or, SATA connected hard drive. So the mechanical drives are certainly going to be better than a USB 3.0 connected drive. That's going to be very slow, especially when it comes time to the final render, which will take forever simply because it's reading and writing on a slow USB connection, and the data transfer rates are horrifying. So what you're seeing now is me transferring from a mechanical drive, which is my general storage drive. It's like a warehouse, I guess you could say. So the C gates are 7,200 RPM, and they're a lot slower than what we're moving on to. So we basically did the cut and paste onto a fast drive. Simple as that. This will be rendered pretty soon. We don't have to wait for that. What we can do now is, while that's coming across, we're going to go new project. And as you can see, we're going to browse for the M2 drive. Okay, current project. There we go. And that's the folder. Select that. I don't like leaving things untitled, so we're going to call this June, because that was the, I guess the month we did this in, Jess Shoot, right? Which means that the model's name was Jess, and it just tells me sometimes we do multiple models, and it's just easy to know who's who. Now, the renderer is Mercury Playback Engine, acceleration is CUDA. Now, when you're using a NVIDIA card, you're going to have this option to use CUDA. Scratch disks, same as project, especially when it's a fast drive like the M2, as I said. I think the ingest settings, nothing too complex here. And we're pretty much good to go. I think that's going to work for us. Don't worry about all this, because literally, well, this is important. I would go definitely with time code. So you want your time code to be showing, and that's the display format literally in the sequence. So we're going to click OK. By then, we've got the M2 drive, which I think transferred about 20 gig in that time. So in a couple of minutes, we transferred 20 gig. Now, if you've used slower laptops, and if you've ever used USB 2.0 and even slower USB 2.0, USB 2.0, that would have taken 20 minutes. So because we had a Seagate 7,200 RPM moving on to that would have even been quicker if we had moved from an SSD drive that was SATA cable connected to the M2 drive, which is direct connected to the motherboard. So just be aware that the M2 drives are the quickest. Okay. Now what we're going to do is, in this case, we're only bringing in video. So this project is just going to be a video-based project. We're not going to worry about the audio that was recorded, because we're going to basically play it to music. So we're going to find some music, and I'm using, at the moment, I'll show you what I use. It's this website here. It's artlist.io. I've gone for the yearly subscription, and essentially what that means is that hopefully you're able to encourage all your clients and everyone else to use the music on here, simply because artlist.io is actually really good, simply because the pricing is a one-off yearly subscription, and you've got unlimited use of very good music. And I'll just give you an example of some of the artists that are on here. Regardless of whether or not this is your cup of tea, you can sort of see what's going on here. These are real musicians. They're obviously going out and performing, and I'll probably get the music playing through there. We get a bit of feedback from my voice, but I'll stop talking for a sec. Great music. I've never, put simply, every client that I've worked with has enjoyed the music. Now, obviously I won't be using that for this video, but it just gives you an example. This was just a recent artist that was featured, and I've got to say, some of the best music for what is essentially a yearly subscription. So you could have 10, 15, 20, 30 songs. Obviously, this isn't really for you if you only do one video in a year, but if you're doing 1 or 2 videos a week and you're wanting music, you're constantly producing, then by all means, this is a great way to go. So what we'll do now, so that's the art list that I'm using, and it's brilliant. It's absolutely no question that that's the way to go. Now, because we're just importing video for this project, what we're going to go is into here, we're going to go current project, and I think what we're going to start with is the SD card. So, and then we're going to go, what was the Canon 5D, right? So this was Canon 5D footage, and then the other was SD card. So one of the things I like to do is go into here and open up a new bin, and we're going to call this video. And we're going to call this, SD card, and you can go Panasonic camera, or in my case, just Panasonic. Now, what we can also do is create another bin, and that might have accidentally moved it in the wrong spot. Let's see if I can just get it out of there. Sometimes that does happen. I'll just Control Z that, because that's a bit frustrating. Let's just see if we can get it where we want it to. So we can call this video, right? Canon 5D, because that's what it was, right? And now what we're going to do is also we can color code that, label it. Notice I've got my labels named so that they're not weird like Caribbean and all that weirdness. So we might just go purple, and then we might go, label, and just leave that, it's fine as a light blue, okay? Or in this case, yeah, sure, let's leave it orange. Now, in case you're wondering about your labels and all that stuff, go into Edit, Preferences, and go into Label Colors. And not only can you double click and pick colors that you actually want, but you can also rename them so that you can literally see visually what the color will be, but also the titles are a bit more sensible. So do what you got to do there in terms of changing the labels. All right, next thing we can do is we're going to be capturing the video SD Panasonic. So we're going to go File, Import. Okay, or Control I, we could have done that. Current project, this is the one we want. And we're going to go with what I said was the Panasonic camera, which is this stuff. Believe it or not, that's not the Panasonic camera, this is. So we're going to bring that in. Now, notice that I've got videos here that aren't renamed, and these ones were brought in with prelude. So I'll show you in another video down the track when we do a prelude in jest. I'll show you why you use prelude, what's the point of it, why would you even bother. But right now the video is here. I'm going to double check that I haven't doubled up in any way. Sometimes I like to just have a look and see that I haven't doubled up, but I don't believe I have. So we should be okay. So what we're going to do is bring all that in. And hopefully Adobe is going to be nice to me and put it in the little yellow area. So let's see if it does that. Okay, and if we open up, that's why I did that. So rather than just click or do something random, the videos end up in the wrong spot and all the rest of it. But as you can see, we're trying to stay organized early in the piece. We're going to right click, label orange, and everything is orange, okay? Now we highlight here and let's do Control I. So there's our little shortcut. We're going to go up a level and we're going to go to this. As you can see, Video Shoot with Jess probably wasn't the best title. It would have been better if I had said, Video Shoot with Jess, but Canon 5D Video would have been more handy. So we can see that's Canon 5D. I know it is because I can just tell by looking at it. And so that's bringing it in as well. Now, the next thing we want to do is we're going to color code that. So, we've waited for that. Okay, and once again, just a quick little color code situation so that we don't get confused. We just right click, label, and purple, and there you go, right? Now, of course, you can bring in your audio and everything else, but for now, that's what we're doing. Now, what we'll do is we need a new timeline, and there's a couple of ways you can do this. First things first, however, if we look at I believe I can see the property of this stuff. Let me have a look. Properties. So what we have here is MPEG, okay? So in case you're wondering how this all works, let's just look at it very simply. First and foremost, the easy thing I think we can talk about is the audio. It's 16-bit stereo, meaning that it is the audio in the camera itself. It's reference audio. If I had have put a Rode shotgun mic on top of the hot shoe of the Canon 5D and then plugged that into the camera, that could be why we've got 48 Hertz, everything else going on there. Frame rate is 25 frames per second. We've got 1920 by 1080 HD, and it's an MPEG movie, meaning it's a .mov. Now, believe it or not, this is the thing you need to understand as to why you would record with an Atomos and why I would record with DNX HD. The interesting thing about the Atomos is it would allow me to feed this video, actually record live or straight to the Atomos, and then we would see that this would actually be D and X, okay? Now, the point I'm making though is that the codec that the Canon 5D camera is using, the compression and the decompression that it goes through is going to be different to the Panasonic DVX200 camera that I had, because if we right click and look at properties here, we're going to notice a couple of things. Still same frame size, that's good, full HD. We've still got 25 frames per second, that's fantastic. But the thing that you've got to notice is most important here is that one, it's a .mp4 file as opposed to a .mov. The MP4 and MOV is just a wrapper. It is what wraps the video. But what you've also got to recognize is that the codec for the Panasonic is different. Having said that, that's why recording to the Atomos directly would mean that, believe it or not, two different cameras would actually have the same codec, simply because the Atomos is the codec that's being used and the Atomos does the recording, meaning we'd bypass all of this. Having said that, it's not the end of the world. What some guys will do in this situation, you've got a couple of ways of handling the different cameras. You could do a transcode. I wouldn't bother unless you've got a problem with it playing back, because as you can see, we can play this back. Let's just have a look. So we've double clicked the video. We should see it come into the source, and you can see it playing. Okay, and as you can see, it's probably not the most useful video because nothing's happening. Now we've finally zoomed in there properly, and we've certainly got some focus. Having said that, what I'm getting at here is it does play back, everything's fine, but the thing you've got to understand is that now when we look at the Panasonic camera, you'll notice that there's just way different things happening with the Panasonic camera. Now, having said that, not the end of the world. What we're going to do now is actually decide, well, okay, we've got two different cameras, two different codecs, which is not being shown here, but it's certainly different. What do we do? Well, one of your options is to go sequence, go file, new sequence, okay? And then what you could do is actually pick AVC intra, and this, believe it or not, would become your wrapper. Now, I would call this the, let's go SEQ hyphen, and let's just go, just to make it easy, we could just call it AVC intra, and then we call it final, meaning it's the final output. What this tells you though, the good news is that everything's fine. 25 frames per second matching both cameras. It gives us 4 audio tracks, which we don't need. We only need one because that's going to be the music file that we use from Artlist. 1920 by 1080 and 25 frames per second, square pixels, which is both cameras are square pixels. So we click OK. Now what we're going to do is we don't need to worry about that. Okay, and in fact, we don't even have to bring the audio in, so we can actually uncheck this. What this will mean is it will just bring in video. If we also want the audio track to come in, which I'll show you now, one way you can just do is that. As you can see, it's ready to bring in the audio, which I have a feeling there's nothing. Oh, there is. Looks like there's some noise. Sorry about the feedback. Okay, because I've got this mic on, I'm not going to turn on this other because it picks up on the speakers. But put simply, to Control Z that, what we could also do is just drag the video in. And as you can see, we've just got the video by dragging from the drag video only. Or the other option you've got is just unselect the track select and just press your comma, and you've got just the video. Now, or the full stop. Okay, now the full stop means that it literally, I guess, one way to look at the way the full stop works is that if we drag this video out, let's just have a look. We drag this video out when we put a full, if we just press full stop, you can see that it overwrites. Whereas if on the other hand, we go Control Z, we do a comma, you can see that it's actually pushed its way in, right? As you can see there. So in other words, it's basically saying with the comma, it's squeezing it in and sort of jamming it in, I guess you could say. It's this one here, right? There's overwrite and then there's insert. So insert means push everything aside and let it sit. Now another way you could do all this is, believe it or not, just go to here, unselect that and press your full stop and it writes it over the top. So just remember you've got options for how you insert your video. You don't always have to go with the one track. And just so you know, to add an extra track, right click in that little little track area and go add track, and you're adding more tracks. Okay, it's this one here. So that's that. Let's just get rid of some of this. We don't need it because we're not actually going to do that type of editing. What we're going to do now is do a quick scrub through and think, all right, well, where do we want to start this shoot? And one of the things I normally do with video is I decide what's going to be in and out by using markers. So in this case, we press play, and I like to actually play things live, in other words, in real time, and then put my markers down. I have seen guys, especially when you're working with the younger kids coming straight out of school, what they'll do is they'll do a bit of this. They'll scrub through like that, not real time, they just scrub, and they start putting in and out marks. But they don't really get a feel for the video, the pace of it. So what you're better off doing is just doing this. You go, you know, and you might think, okay, something interesting's happening, but maybe not. But one of the things I can easily do is just scrub through quickly just to make sure, okay, we're losing, this is very bad. What we've got there is something in terms of the camera. I think it actually just went up into the ceiling, so it's not a big deal. But, and then the camera just decides to just go straight up into the ceiling because I accidentally, so then I can mark that. I can press double M, so I press M for marker, M again, and I actually mark that as green. That'll do us, and this is, we can just call this out point. You can call it anything. You could even say, you know, camera moves up, you know, and that's what I'll do here. Camera accidentally tilts up, right? So that's fine, and you can see your notes are there, okay? Now in here, we can do the same. We can just, now I've got a lot of shortcuts set so that I can jump to my markers quickly. From memory, I believe it's Shift and, actually I forget what it is now, but put simply, the shortcuts for jumping between markers, but in this case, I can just go foils, right? Layering. Okay, so that's enough for that. So just remember the shortcuts for jumping between markers. As you can see, I can jump between the two markers now. So that's something you're going to want to be doing quite a bit, is doing that sort of thing. Then I can just quickly scrub through. Obviously the ceiling is there for a little while. We might just mark that as a red. Once I've come back, obviously I've come back to the camera. Let's have a look. Okay, we mark that. And then just before that, we can mark again, do a double M, mark it red, and go, you know, something like camera tilted back down again, right? So that's fine. But it tells me, oh yeah, that's where the camera tilts up. I could put another marker here and mark that red, you know, and it tells me that this is pretty much useless footage. Now, the other thing we do here is just to double check. This is just a quick way of checking the footage to see, have we got, you know, points that are nowhere? Are we, you know, are we over it a little bit? And we can sort of see that, yeah, okay, we've got some good footage, sort of, but we're done, right? Now I can mark that a little bit more. If something was more interesting in here, I might mark it especially. But what we'll do now, so that was the video there. So that was one SD card video. So that's this one, and we just go through. Now, believe it or not, I can quick scrub just to see if I've got anything different. And I've obviously, gone through and really captured the foils being inserted. But believe it or not, we won't be using every single piece of this. It just gave me slightly different angles. But once we've got it, the only thing I can think of is that we may have a scene where the girl's doing something interesting other than looking down and reading a magazine. So I do a quick scrub through. Maybe we've got the girl. Let's just see what she's doing. Okay, so what I think might be interesting here is the fact that we've panned from left to right. So I'm looking for a nice clean pan. So there, so we mark it, we press M again, and we've got panning, right to left, okay? So we've marked that, then we press, she looks up again, and boom, right? So mark again, and we've got, finished panning, okay? That, believe it or not, might be all we need out of this. And then we sort of look for other things, but she's looking down and we're not super excited. Now, what you could do, if you believe that this clip's really good or you're definitely going to use it or something, what you can now do is right-click, label, and mark it green, telling you, hey, this is the clip we're going to actually use. You can even make your markers a different color. So what we would do in this case is jump to this marker, press M, blue, boom. We've changed the color. Jump to the next marker. You've got to be on the marker to then press the M key again, pick the blue, and you've now marked it in and out with your little, and that's telling you, okay, we're going to use it. Let's load this one in. So obviously I'm double clicking, loading it in. Here we've got the owner of the business, and we're not going to worry about him doing all this talking to camera stuff. So because he's having a bit of a chuckle there, that might actually be what we use. So we just look at it this way. So let's just go back, and let's have a look. 1, okay, M. Now, there was that little moment where he's looked at the camera. So let's just go 1. Okay, we just dropped there. Let's just jump to it. Before he does that, okay, he's looking down. I like that. Then we're going to miss this bit where he looked up. We're going to grab that. And we mark that out. So we scrub through just quickly to see if there's anything new. Better angle. Did I do anything interesting? Was there a nice pan? Let's see if that's a nice pan. So maybe, in future I might look at that and go, next time pan a bit slower, but we've got 1. Okay, we mark that out. Once again, we can say here finished panning, enter, and we jump to the previous marker and mark that. Panning right to left and go OK or press enter. So now we've got a little note there, panning from right to left, boom, and we might use that. Once again, we might just label that as green. So what we're clearly doing now is, believe it or not, rather than picking a clip and putting it into the timeline and then picking another clip and doing that, what you're actually better off doing is just going right through all of this and just deciding in or out. Is this going to be used, or are we getting rid of this? Incidentally, we've got a sequence here. As you can see, you can actually, because you might have a project where you've got multiple sequences, one of the things you can do is the following. You can just go new bin and call it sequence, SEQUENCE, sequence. And cut, sequence, right click, paste, and we've got our little sequence where we want it. Once again, shift click, right click, label, and it's light blue by the looks of things, right? Or in this case, aqua. But there you go. So your sequences are all there. So if you create yet another sequence and another sequence and another sequence, rather than having your sequences sort of hidden away in the wrong place, you can just quickly find them all here. Now, incidentally, AVC Intra, just so you know, is actually a wrapper that a lot of DVD, I guess, videos are used. So put simply, AVC Intra is a final render that the video will actually output, and it would work on a DVD. It's still, put simply, it's a very good codec for this type of shoot. Okay, you don't have to worry about compression and things like that. Having said that, like I said, you're actually better off shooting on an Atomos, and the way you would actually do that, we'll have to show you in a future video, but one of the other ways you can actually create a sequence to match the video, right click and go to new sequence from clip. And what that will do is create a new sequence with the properties. What you can then do is immediately delete the clip, but you've got the settings as, so you can see, we've got a new sequence from clip. If we now go into sequence and settings, these settings are exactly the same as the footage itself. Okay, we're going to cancel that. We're going to Control Z that. We don't want that. Okay, so we'll go back and find our little AVC sequence. Now, let's go back through. So we're going to jump to here and see if we can't. Now we've got it slightly closer. So that I'm liking the pan down now. We're doing something a little bit more interesting. So we're just going to grab that, mark it. As you can see, I'm using a Miller tripod here. I love the Miller tripods. Australian made, by the way, but they're fantastic. Miller tripods, so smooth in comparison to a Manfrotto. Now, I'm going to jump to the previous, mark that, and go slow pan down. Okay. And we'll probably use that. So we'll mark that as usable. So we go label green. Now, incidentally, I do have some shortcuts here marked out, I believe, for Premiere. Although I should. And if I do, I can at least put you out of your misery if you're wondering about, well, actually, I know how to do that. We'll jump straight to here. You go to markers and you can see mark an in, I, mark out, O. Okay, so this is, we'll show you that in a sec. Mark a clip, mark a selection, and then go to in is Shift I, go to out, I believe, is Shift O, clear an in point, clear an out point, add a marker, go to next marker is Shift M, go to previous marker, Control Shift M. And obviously I use a, I've shown this before and I'll show you again. I'll just point down here. So basically we're using one of these. These are a Tartarus. These little, those keyboards are actually made by Razer, and they allow you to essentially, let me just double check I haven't messed up the camera here, that there allows you to create shortcuts on each one of those keys. There's 15 there, and obviously I've assigned the keys to be Control Shift M and Shift M and all the rest of it. So just so you know, that's how I'm jumping quickly between all of the markers and whatnot. Okay, so jump out of there, you know, and what we're going to be doing is, just to give you an idea, we're sort of telling a story, you know, and what we might do is just go really quick, right? I like that, so that's looking good. So we just go bang, you know, he's sort of pontificating about what he should do. We're not going to worry about all that. He's got that. That's what I'm liking. So once again, I like to mark as real time, bang, we jump to there, spins around, love it. Boom, okay. And we can do that again. So we just, once again, I've actually assigned a keyboard shortcut that puts my frames back about 20 to 25 frames. So it's a 25 frame jump as opposed to doing shift back, which only jumps at 5 frames at a time, and you have to do like multiples. I just press this one key, and that's why I use the Razer keyboards and the Razer products, because you can make these little shortcuts really quickly. So 1, okay, so mark that. So what I'm doing is marking these little ins and outs. If I start to see we've got a little bit of nothing happening, and we've got a repeat of that. Now sometimes when you're doing music-based videos, it's actually okay to have the zoom. So believe it or not, especially if he's doing something interesting, press the space bar, mark it. Because he moves so quickly, we could actually use that. I'll press the plus just to zoom in a little bit so you can see my markers a bit better. In fact, I'll do that. Nine times out of 10, I know my movements are going to be, in this case, right to left. So what you can also do is what I call a shooting pattern. So your shooting pattern, don't have to do it, but it helps you in a post-production situation where you might know, okay, I'm going to do a shooting pattern. So I'll start out wide in this type of situation. Look for moments of action. So in this case, the hands moving is excellent. Rubbing the product through is great. But you don't want to sit there for 30 seconds on that. You sit on it for 5 seconds and then you've got to jump to the next. In this case, I know I might move from left to right. Sorry, from right to left. So I know I'm slowly panning from right to left. And then I might do back, right to left. And then I know I'm going to come back and do left to right, left to right. So I know with my shooting pattern, so to speak, that that's what I'm going to be doing. Now, that's just so that when you come to edit, you know that you've done a right to left, and then a left to right, and then a left to right. One might be a bit quicker than the other. And so you know in these situations what your shots are. So let's just go back to here. Notice I've jumped in a little bit as well. And I know I'm going to go from right to left, so I mark. And once again, moving the Miller tripod really slow. Now we're doing a tilt down, so we might mark that. Okay, we mark that. And once again, you can start telling yourself what everything is. So, okay, so we're going to go M, we're going to go pan, right to left, okay? And then jump to the next marker. Okay, we'll jump back, go M, and then we call this pan down. And then jump to the next marker. And we're sort of panning up, but not very evenly. Okay, so what we're going to do, like I said, go back about 50 frames. So, mark. And mark. And we might even go back a little bit to kind of catch just as we finish. Then what we do is we actually jump to the next marker and we can delete that very quickly, just like that. I believe if we go to markers, clear, or delete, clear or markers, clear selected marker. Now to clear selected marker, you've got to be on the marker. So to get on the marker, you'd use this. Go to next marker or go to previous marker, all right? So what we're now doing is we're actually looking, I'm just gonna jump ahead a little bit now. Notice we're a little bit out of focus. Now, if you want to be really creative, I could have, eventually I'll end up getting a rocker. So basically you get the vary zooms, and essentially what that allows you to do is use one little control that essentially allows you to zoom the camera slowly, very, very slowly, and at the same time pull focus. So that's kind of what you want to be doing, is doing those more complex shots. In fact, what you could do is have a second person on the camera that's essentially holding this little vary zoom and then zooming slowly and then pulling focus while they're looking at the video assist. So that's why two people on a camera allows you to pull focus as you're zooming in and do all these complicated shots that otherwise would be a little bit tricky, trying to kind of get a tripod happening with the arm, the arm down here, and then the zoom button rocker up the top, and then how do you get to the focus ring. So those sorts of devices are very useful for these more elaborate shots that, quite frankly, you don't think they're going to be useful, but in a shoot like this, you suddenly realize, well, what we could have done is, as we came to this point, we would actually pull focus onto here and not be out of focus. Got it? So we would actually be starting to zoom out of there and pull in focus over here. So then they would be sharp focus. Now, the other thing we've noticed, of course, is that I did pull focus. Using the Atomos, you can tell when you're out of focus because it's got the focus lines. Now, I was doing that on purpose. Let's just have a look to see. It's pretty subtle, but he looks up, as he looks down, mark it. Now, notice another interesting thing about editing. Editors talk about when someone's blinking, and it's really fascinating. Sometimes you'll find that both people blink at the same time, as you can see. Fascinating, but true. He's blinking as she's blinking. Quite an interesting thing that does indeed happen when you're editing is that two people can start blinking at the same time. And it certainly happens a lot when people are looking at each other and talking together. They literally blink at the same time, and that generally suggests that people are in sync, believe it or not. Even though he's not looking or seeing her eyes, they've literally blinked at the same time. So what editors will do is they'll miss the blink and they go with the eyes opening. So what I'm getting at here is that you'll notice that your edit point is when they blink. And then as they open their eyes, that's the moment that you actually cut to, is the moment the eyes open. So we'll go back a few frames and you'll sort of get an idea of what I'm talking about. So one, boom. Okay, you can see that I'm picking the blink, and then, right, eyes are open again. We actually mark it, jump to the previous, and we'll remove that marker. And then what we call this, believe it or not, if we want to be kind of funny about it, we go both blinked time. And that tends to suggest, believe it or not, that that's a brilliant time to actually cut. It's a fascinating thing, but one of the best books I think written on the subject, believe it or not, was Walter Murch. I've actually got his book here, In the Blink of an Eye. Literally talks about how people blink. Am I showing you the book properly? Let's just double quickly check. Yep, In the Blink of an Eye. That's the book. Walter Murch, one of the world's finest video editors. George Lucas and everyone else would absolutely, this is what I would call a brilliant book on editing. Now, the point of that book is that it teaches you to edit, surprisingly, when people blink. It's actually natural. In fact, some actors are so powerful, your Michael Caine's, for example, train themselves not to blink, so that when they're acting and performing, they're so intense because they don't blink. And you'll see weaker actors blinking like this constantly, and it actually weakens their performance. The point is, though, as an editor, it'll be either something you subconsciously notice, or you'll start to notice it like now. And if we keep going, let's just go back in here. I'm actually on the wrong screen. Now, if he's looking at the camera and doing all of that, it tends to suggest that we probably won't use it. When he looked away, it was okay. So we're going to just jump back 1, 2, 3, and we know he's going to look back up. So we might mark there, and he just absolutely did. He's looking back up again. Now, another thing that can be helpful as well when editing, I love moments where Now, I'm not a great editor by any long shot, but I do love to communicate my ideas, and I certainly love to learn from people that know infinitely more than I do. But the thing I've noticed is that there's great moments in when someone's body comes across the camera, bang, this is a beautiful time to cut out of here and then cut to a totally different scene, because he's literally filled the screen with black, and boom, we jump to another shot. So this is a beautiful moment. We're just going to double mark that and go Terence fully blocks camera. And then I just press the tab key, obviously. You've got to know your shortcuts now. You're going to learn them. And so tab put me straight into the little comments area. So I put perfect time to cut away to another shot, or point in time, right? So we'll put that in there, point in time. And this is the cool stuff. And so I might mark that in blue to tell me this is a really good shot. So out of all these markers, I go, oh, there's a blue one here. Why is that? And I hover over it and I can see fully blocks camera and perfect time to cut away to another shot. Great use of markers. This is whenever you're collaborating with on a project, incidentally, always save, guys. That's probably helpful, or Control S, but certainly be doing the file save. This is a perfect time to teach your I guess your video editors. And if I was to teach a young, film student, hey, how to edit, I would absolutely not allow them to take all this footage, which is looking like about 2 or 3 hours worth of footage, and he just does in and out points, drops into the timeline, another in and out point, and there's nothing, we don't know where's what, right? So it's very hard for us to go back and find what he found, what he didn't find, what he didn't like, and all the rest of it. So no question that this is going to save you, believe it or not, a lot more time. You might think that it's taking time to do these markers, but you'll be surprised that once you get into a project, how much better it is to be doing this type of thing. Now, I would actually suggest move away from this moment. There's no need for any of this now, because quite frankly, you're far better off jumping well away. Even if we've got a nice pretty shot of her here, which may work, but I wouldn't bother, okay? Right? Let's get out of that. So I love this shot. We're going to mark that label green, and a really good shot in there that I absolutely love. So next video, like I said, perfect time to jump to here, and we're just going to do a quick scrub only because we just want to see how long this video goes for and what's the most useful thing we can use. I also like to look and see, did I do a pan? Did I do anything useful? I sort of did something useful and nice there. So one of the things I love is that type of thing, right? Where he moves. So let's just look at it close up. We're going to basically do this. Right? I love that stuff. So let's go back, press the home key to jump straight to the front of the timeline. Press the end key on your keyboard to jump to the end. So once again, we go boom. We know that's the beginning. So let's just try that again. What I'm trying to do, and this is actually another fascinating thing Walter Murch talked about. He would sometimes play a clip up to 20 times. So he would do this 20 times and find his in point, and then go and play it another 20 times to find the out point. That's how much of a perfectionist he was. He would literally play and replay the video until he found himself hitting the same point that he felt he was going to cut to, and he felt, yep, I've hit that almost 20 times in a row on the same point, that's where I'm cutting. That was Walter Murch. Walter Murch believed that you would play in real time, so he didn't believe in this. He certainly didn't believe in scrubbing like that and then going, oh yeah, we'll use that and mark. He wouldn't do that. He would literally go back to the start, and let me just see if I can't pick a point where I think we're going to go, right? I think that's a good place to start. I can go back home and go boom, and I hit the marker. Did you see that? Now this tells you that I've hit the marker. I'm on the marker, right? If I zoom in, I've literally hit the marker again. So that tells me that that's probably where it belongs. Let's try it again. 1, 2, boom. Oh, I missed it by a frame. If I go back a frame, there it is. So you can start to see that I'm liking that spot, right? Or that spot. So I've got 2 points that I like. 1 frame after the marker or 1 frame on the marker. Let's see if I can't hit it again. Right? Now I'm 1 frame early. But let's just look at it. I think we had a slowdown there. Yeah, right? So I'm hitting the marker. Point I'm making though is that's kind of how you want to be editing. You want to just play it in real time and find that point that you think is the sweet spot to start on. Then you kind of find that point that you like out. Now, another interesting thing about editing, and this was kind of counterintuitive to me, I used to think that the best time to stop a cut was when the action stopped. So in other words, an actor is talking, moving, and doing all this movement, and then they suddenly pause to look at someone, and I thought, well, that's the time to cut, when they stop acting and look. But believe it or not, Walter Murch and a lot of other editors believe that you don't stop and cut when the acting stops. You actually cut when the acting is in motion. So in other words, the actor is in the middle of a turn to look at someone, and then they like to cut as they're turning, and then cut to maybe camera out here and they're now facing camera that way. Or, you know, they're turning to look at someone and then the camera turns to an overhead, or whatever the camera happens to be. So that surprisingly actually works better. So there's been some videos where I've shown dancers dancing, and as they literally go to swing and pirouette, you cut to the second camera that shows them finishing the pirouette. So you actually cut midway through where you feel it's right when you play it live. So the point I'm making is that, believe it or not, it disguises the cut. So it's actually nicer to pick a moment that's moving and then boom, this is a good time to stop mid-movement, because you jump to another thing or another moment and it feels right. It disguises the cut. But if we actually wait to cut when he stops, when there's like no movement, it actually works against you. Counterintuitive? Yeah, I thought it was. I thought that the time to cut was when on a downbeat like that. So this is actually a bad time to cut because there's not much action, and then if you cut now, you jarringly move to an action moment or no action. It's quite unusual. The exception, pardon me, is I think when you're showing the start of a scene and it's for drama purposes, you're showing very little to no action, but you know that it's going to suddenly build up to a high action moment at the end of the scene. So there are moments where having a downbeat like this is good. But the point I'm making is that clearly there's nothing happening here. This is probably a horrible time to cut, because if you cut now, you're making it so obvious because there's nothing happening. So let's make it clear and obvious when there's a good time to cut. This is a good time to start, I believe. If something had have happened after, we're looking for something interesting. And it's my pan movement. Let's have a look. Okay, so we're going to go a bit early. So we've got a tilt up. So what I'm going to do, okay, we've got the start of the tilt up. Mark that. Boom. Right, mark the out. So what we're going to do is go mark, and this is end of tilt up. Now notice obviously when you move the camera from, from up, let's say from up to down, it's a tilt, and from down to up, it's a tilt. When it's left to right, it's a pan. When it's right to left, it's a pan. Obviously I did the opposite of everything there, but anyway, you get my point. Now, if I zoom out a little bit by pressing the minus, and then go to the previous marker, press M, and I can mark that as, let's say, beginning or start, tilt, up, and that's enough. Press the enter key, we're done. Now we'll jump out to here, let's have a look. Other things that are nice, I think, you can actually do a slight cut or a slight jump. He's smiling, he's having fun with the client. Okay, but he did look kind of self-consciously there, which we don't want. So we're going to go back, back, back. Let's have a look. If we can just go boom, mark that, and go previous, and we just go Terrence smiling, right? That's enough for us. So we've done that. Once again, Control S, or if you're still confused, just go to here, save, Control S. Obviously, Mac is the shortcut. So I'm using a PC, so we'll go with that. And then we've got the beginning of a tilt down. So let's just have a look where we get it. Bang, about there, right? We can go M again and start, tilt, down, enter. Now, there was a lookup, so what we're going to do this time, looked up, we don't want that, we want to mark it there. Doesn't matter, I get what's going on there. And we've got a nice smooth tilt up. The Miller tripods, I've got to say, are fantastic. I am by no means a professional when it comes to, you know, a Miller tripod makes me look like I'm a genius. Seriously amazing. I think I've got the Miller Air. The Air is fantastic. They are so smooth, they're infinitely better than their earlier model tripods. Their earlier model tripods kind of had a stiffness to them. You know, when you get a tripod started, there's that little inertia moment of jam, and then you're sort of pulling it and you sort of get that little movement on the camera, and then it finally wants to move, and then when you get to the end, it sort of wants to do this. Well, the Miller Air, it just moves, literally glides like your hand can do, and then you just ease to an absolute perfect finish. The Miller Air tripods, brilliant, bar none. If you are tempted to splurge on yourself and get yourself a really good tripod, bar none, they are fantastic. Let's get to the end of this. We're just going to see if there's anything interesting. Now, what would be interesting for me is if Terrence, for example, had a spun around, blocked the camera again. That's another good cut point, but we don't get that, and that's fine. Accidentally did that wrong, so we're just going to go Control S, save that. Again, label that green. Now you'll notice I'm starting to label a lot of things green. So what I could suggest here is that if you're not going to use a clip, you might mark it red and then leave everything orange, so that you're not getting this kind of weird stuff happening where I'm seeming to love everything, aren't I? So what we're going to do is just go through. If we've got more of the same, which I believe we do, we're going to leave that out. We're going to leave it orange. We're not even going to bother with that. We're going to go again and just quickly scrub through by just grabbing. I'm looking for something a bit different. Nothing there that's enough for us to really jump to it. Okay, now I might just, because we're losing patience, aren't we now? We're starting to realize, hey guys, I think we get it. He's doing a really good, nice haircut. So we don't need to start there static and then, you know, worry about static stuff at the end. What we're going to do instead is just wait for that magic moment of where we have a little bit of a pan. It's nice and diagonal. Okay, and we're going to miss just before he spins up. Okay, let's just mark it for now. We're going to go to here and we're going to try to find the start of this pan. Boom, which I think is about there. Let's see if it's just nice and smooth. It jerked a little bit. You can see I didn't quite pull it off. Now, once again, the same principle applies where we look for that moment of boom. So I guess you could, magicians use this technique a lot. They call it the downbeat and the upbeat. Magicians and a lot of performers have what's called the downbeat. Actors know about the downbeat. So the downbeat is this moment where he seems to be just, you know, putting something away. It's not really an action moment, is it? Putting a comb down is a downbeat, but picking a comb up and going to use it is an upbeat. In other words, it's a moment in time that is seemingly the beginning of action, okay? And you'll see a lot of good editors are incredible at picking that critical moment of the key moment that you just need that tells you everything's happening. For example, Bad editing, I think, is someone grabbing a ladder, putting it against a window, and then climbing up it, and then kind of getting to the window, opening the window, and then getting in. Unless there's a moment of struggle and there was something important in that, you may not need to show it. You might just show literally the person, window opens and someone scrambles in. You just cut all the way of them getting in, and sometimes that actually works really well. You just cut all the flub and got straight to the person getting in. And you don't need to think, oh, I wonder how he got through that window. Do you really care? You just immediately assume they must have got through with a ladder or some other means, but we don't care. Unless they're an incredibly sleuthy type of person where there's something to be said about that individual using a ladder and all this other stuff, then by all means you don't need it. So once again, do we really need to show, for example, here, the moment where he puts down a comb, right? When you really think about it, no, right? In fact, the downbeat seems to be starting even sooner than we marked. We think the downbeat is even there. So we mark a little bit earlier, and then we jump to the next one and actually get rid of it. We don't want that moment in time. Now, we can tighten up a little bit more. Right, and we might even not bother with that. We might just go bang, mark that, and not bother with the other moment. Now, obviously your expression isn't the best, but, and we might even come in here, boom, we want that, we might mark that. It's just a quick cut. So some of you may agree or disagree with where I've edited, you know, and you might even see that that's the out point. But the point I'm making is that there is a moment in editing where clearly it's almost nothing. And do you need to show hairdresser, in this case, putting down a comb? Do you need to show the hairdresser absolutely picking it up? Sometimes it's better to just cut all that and go straight to them doing something really cool with the comb straight away, and then moving the hands, and then cut to something else, because we're showing action and pace, and that's probably what we need to be doing here, is showing this person in their element. And their element is not dusting or wiping or little things that aren't that important. I think in this case, we're showing him fussing over her and smiling with her and laughing. We want to show his personality with the girl, and also the attention to detail. So look for those things, and you're not going to show that off by wasting time noticing him put combs in a drawer or pulling things out of a drawer. This is where I think the young videographers get a little bit into trouble. They think they've got to show those little details. Even when he was pumping, do we really need to see that? Do we need to see him pump? Maybe if we see him pump, he pumps once, and then we immediately cut to him finessing it through her hair. Or if you notice that there's no need for it, don't bother. So what we're looking for now, we might use that. But having said that, you could even have a sliding scale where you have green is definitely in. Maybe you have, say, you know, another color that shows maybe 50-50, and then you show red as being definitely don't bother. There was nothing in this video clip. Let's see if we can't find something far more interesting. Okay, like I said, this is a classic example of what I would call a downbeat. Nothing really happening. This is a tricky shot to make interesting, in my opinion. So we're going to fly past that and look for a moment where we think something a bit more interesting is happening. So I like this. This moment here may be what we can use if we just cut all that out and see if we can't get him. Boom, right? That's what we want. We want him to get out of that way. So what we might do, just to be a little bit more interesting here, let's just see if we can't get that again. So we want to get that, right? So we're just going to find that one moment where we think, mark it there. Boom, he's out of the way. Thank you very much. So the only reason I use that is because it does seem to be an interesting time to just... Now it's either going to work or it's not, but we've got it in there as a moment, and then I might just jump to it, mark it again, and call it Terence blocking camera, and blue, and then possible in, cut in. So, it's telling me to use this as an in moment. Boom, he just cuts across dynamically. We get out of there, we don't want it. So sometimes these moments of cutting across the camera are actually quite interesting because they're rare. They're rare moments in front of camera. So we go, boom, we want that mark. We'll go again. And once again, Terence blocks camera. Now, later on, I may find out that this is a horrendous way to edit, and I find that that's absolutely not what you do. But boom, we cut out of there pretty quickly. We don't want to leave ourselves staring at this for too long. So I've marked it out. Now I'm going to fly ahead and see if I can't find something quite interesting. And there was nothing to stop me from creating that moment as well. I could have easily been off the tripod, because clearly I'm on a tripod here. I could have actually grabbed the camera off the tripod, put it onto one of those camera holders. Is that what we're calling them? I actually have a rig, and it's called the Fig Rig, Manfrotto's Fig Rig, which, believe it or not, has stopped selling in 2017. I really think that was a mistake. Fig rigs are brilliant. I love my Fig Rig. It's actually got some rails on it as well. The camera just slots in. You're just holding the steering wheel, and you're doing all this cool stuff with your camera. So the Fig Rigs are incredible, in my opinion. They've got this beautiful handheld feel to them, where there's this little camera, sort of very subtle, very, very subtle shake to them that's just beautiful to watch. And it's a little bit more dynamic. And in that case, I could Fig Rig around him, so I could go from, I could have the camera here, and then I'd Fig Rig back into his back, black out, cut to another moment, and you'd start to train the audience to know that when I've gone into his black shirt, that we're actually cutting to a moment in time further ahead. So that's the cool way of using your shooting style. So let's just see if we can't find something super dynamic. Now we've got a nice pretty face here, haven't we? So let's use that. We're cutting it off, and some of you are probably thinking, what is this guy doing? He's got this pretty model and he keeps blocking her with this guy's black shirt. So let's stop that. Once again, downbeat, putting things away, grabbing things, putting them in, still a bit of a downbeat, and we start to get some action. So we're going to go there. Once again, another downbeat. So what you could do, believe it or not, you could do a couple of what I would call 3 quick cuts. So people are trained to understand the threes. So we're going to jump to that marker. 1, boom, we're going to get, so 1, boom. Let's just see if I can't get out of there a bit sooner. No, this is not the way to edit. I don't like that. Let's 1, 2, bang. I can get out of there. So we've got 1. So what I might do is go mark and go first. Okay, let's do it. 1 ST first of 3 quick cuts. Okay, enter. Okay, I'm going to mark it blue actually, believe it or not, or I might mark it aqua to give myself that idea of, hey, it's the first of 3 quick cuts. So we go 1. Boom, we've got another moment of action. This is the second moment. Beautiful, love that. Bang. So we jump, okay. And believe it or not, it's probably a good idea to have the cuts. So this is the second, okay, of QUICK quick cuts. Okay, mark it the same color to kind of say, hey, this is part 1, this is part 2. You might make them the same duration, you might not remember. Just because I've marked this duration doesn't mean that I'll actually use that duration. It's obviously possible that I shorten, but I might even shorten it now, like bang, I just decide that that's my moment out and I can mark accordingly, right? Now, go to the next. So this is the next moment. Now we're looking for something a little bit more interesting. Let's have a look. And we've got some steam happening. So let's just see what that steam's doing for us. Bang, we're going to go mark. We've got that steam happening. And we've got the lovely pretty face as well. So we jump back, mark, and we go third. Quick cut and pick the color. And so now we know we've got 1, 2, 3, and it's all about pacing, isn't it? If we let that play, we kind of go, where do I want to stop? Boom. Oh, I missed the space bar. Don't you love it? Let's just jump back to what I thought I was going to do. So 1, and then boom. I can stop there, right? If we zoom in a little bit, you can see that I've come in about 4 or 5 frames early. Now, that would mean that we literally cut once, twice, 3 times, starting and finishing on those little markers. So I'm going to mark that again. So I can either go from here to here, from here to here, from here to here, and they go back to back. 1, 2, 3, boom, boom, boom. Now, if you don't want to do that, and you want to go further ahead in time, you get the principle. The idea is that we went 1, 2, 3, and then we move into the 4th shot further ahead. These are... The threes is obviously a famous, well-known artistic, the rule of threes. There's a whole heap of rules of threes, isn't there? The 3 is considered a beautiful number, whereas 2, not as beautiful. So it's quite interesting, actually, how the number 3 is important. Another book that I could show you, I'm going to have to get up and sort of grab it, but I believe I've got it over here. I'll show you this other book for editing. This is actually a really good one. The Invisible Cut. That one there is actually a story written by a woman who was an editor for quite some time. Her father, I think, was an editor. He was an editor, and her husband was an editor. So how about that? And obviously she knew a lot of famous people. What's this girl's name? Why haven't we got it here? Bobby Osteen. Really good book. I mean, you're going to be fine with these two. These 2 books, read them. You will certainly learn how to cut. You'll learn how to cut better than I've just shown you, obviously. But the important thing is that you're in safe hands reading those 2 books. You'll certainly make some very good editing choices. And believe me, people are on the lookout for good editors, okay? You can certainly be a busy individual just with editing alone. What we're going to do now, we're going to jump out of here. Let's have a look. And I actually love how pretty she's looking. Aren't you too? So what we can do is maybe ignore this as the 3rd one and actually go here. I love how she's looking really pretty now. Let's have a look. And I love how the hair was flicked. So once again, we're going with a moment in action, right? Right? In the middle of action is actually a lot better. Let's just jump back. We're going to go before that and go boom. So we might even pull it a couple of frames later. Okay, do we even start there? Let's have a look. Let's just try again. We can actually start there. And we cut. So we might find that that's where we want to start. So we go M. Let's have a look. I've actually got a little thing on my keyboard there that I have to get rid of. Okay, so we're going to go with 3rd, quick cut, and then just go option 2, giving us a second option. We're going to go bang, interested in that. And we just got that happening. So what we really wanted in this cut, what we've obviously done is we've started with an action moment and then paused here. Now, without going too far into this, because I think you get the point now, guys. I think you actually get what's going on. Let's get on with some editing here, and I'll show you how quick it is now to actually go ahead and create this. Look at this. So what we're going to do is, now, incidentally, those of you who are wondering, hey, what's happening with the video for the Canon 5D? The reason we're not using the Canon 5D just yet is because, and I love this guy smoking in my shot, or is he breathing and it was freezing? Believe it or not, he's not smoking, it's actually freezing. Is because it's further in time. So we're not going to worry about the Canon 5D footage. So let's go back to here and see if I didn't decide that I was going to use it. Okay, let's just jump to what we decided was going to be here. Okay, I actually think we're better off starting. We definitely don't want her looking at the magazine. I think we're over that little. I'm not happy with the way I started things. I think my angle was wrong as well. We decided no to the magazine, and I think we weren't happy with this either. Now, one of the interesting things you could possibly find in here, okay, what we're going to do is this. Okay, I actually like what's going on here. So we're going to find the marker, pause, bang. Now, what we're going to do with this shot, just to give you an idea, okay, I actually like that. So let's go back. Go back again. Right, mark. Just love how quick she's working, right? That's why we like this little shot. It's just fast. Mark it out. Now what we're going to do is the following. We jump to the previous marker, which is our in. We're going to mark it with I, the letter I. We're going to jump to the end, mark it with the letter O. Now remember, we've got an overwrite edit, which is that one, and an insert edit. Now, overwrite literally means throw the video on top of whatever's there. Don't push anything left and right, just smack it on top. Now, remember what I said. You can actually track select and essentially drop it on, video track number 3, video track number 2, or video track number, So what we're going to do is we're going to start with that one. We're going to start with the comma, or in this case, we just go insert. Let's zoom in a little bit to the sequence, plus, 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 and let's have a look, right? Straight to it. Bang. Thank you very much. Now, to jump to the end of this clip, we literally press the down arrow and we're on the end of it, okay? To jump to the front of that, press the up arrow. So let's do that. Now, we've done that. We can leave those ins and outs. We're not interested in any more of this clip, but that's how you start editing. Now we're going to jump to here, and I think we're going with that. Let's just double check it. Okay, so we're not going to start where we started. I don't like going from a standstill to a start pan. Okay, and what we had was that magical transition of focus from there to there. So let's just try that. Now, let's just go with the in, end, jump to the next marker, mark it with the O as the out point. We'll do another insert edit. And you can start to get a feel of what's going on. Now, before I get too far into this edit, I would actually now find a song on Artlist that I think will work perfectly, which would be my next step, and definitely choose it. Now, a couple of things to understand that you can do here. Depending on what you feel you want to send to your audience, this is one of the things that we can start looking at is transitions, although I wouldn't be doing transitions at this point in time. But let's just show you a cross dissolve. Okay, we're going to throw it down, zoom in so we can see what's going on, double click, and you can change the duration. It's 1 second. You don't want, please, I'll tell you right now, I've seen some videos where the cross dissolves and everything go for like, I've seen intros on short films where they go for like a minute. Seriously? A short film with a black intro? Who do you think is sitting through your intro for a minute? Do you really think that people aren't fast forwarding that? So don't overindulge here. You know, 1 second and 10 frames which is what that is, and you can see it's extended by 10 frames. That's enough. Seriously, give it a rest, all right? So you can start to see that that's plenty for a cross dissolve. Now, I've got to be honest with you, I will be showing the next round of this where I actually start doing sending these clips out to After Effects. So, and then we'll do some interesting stuff where we kind of play around with these videos a bit more. Now, incidentally, I just wanted to quickly show the cross dissolve just to give you an idea of, hey, this is the way it's all going to look. But more importantly, I wouldn't be adding cross dissolves and all that stuff just yet. It's too early to get that done right now, simply because there's an option of sending this to After Effects, doing some cool effects in there, bringing it back, and then add your cross dissolves. Cross dissolves and things like that are done late in the piece. So that's all I'm saying about that. Now, once again, another thing you can do, okay, let's just go to the next clip. Do we finish with that? Have we got anything in here that we want? No, I think that's enough. She's looking at her magazine. Now we're just going to find the cool moment. Okay, so we could possibly use that, show him as being kind of funny. And once again, let's just plus in there. Okay, we want to avoid the moment he looks at the camera. And let's go back. So I'm happy with the start point there. So we're going to go in, and then we're going to quickly go boom, right? Just as he spins his head is a good time to, let's just try that again. Right? Just before he does that, right? Okay, so we go mark, out, and now we're going to jump forward, and then bang. Okay, so that's how we do that. All right. Now, this is definitely one method of editing, what I'm showing you right now. Another time, what you might have, Control Save there, sometimes you get a clip that you're really happy with, and you actually make it one big long clip along here, right? And then you have your cutaway B-roll, which is a completely different thing, and you actually just start throwing your B-roll up here. So I'll give you an example of how that could work. Imagine this is just one big long clip, you're really happy with it, you think it's amazing, and you just want to show a cutaway happening right there, let's say, right? Here's how you do it. I'm going to show you a cool 3-point edit using this. So we'll clear the in and out point, okay? And what we're going to do is this. We can go track select here. We mark an in point, jump to the end, which doesn't want to do, there's a reason. Okay, I just pressed the down arrow and it didn't move to here. Why is that? Because believe it or not, you've got track select up here. So what you do is you press and hold the shift key, then press the down arrow, mark the out point. So what have you done? You've gone into your sequence and said, hey, Adobe, I want this to be the in point. I want that to be the out point. Let's just jump back to the in point. So we're sitting there waiting patiently. And as you can see, we're track selected, ready to put our video in here. But in here, all we need to do is tell Adobe, I want that to be the start, okay? And don't worry about the out. The out is left because it's created by here. When we press the full stop, now watch what happens if we do the overwrite. Okay, Control Z, this is overwrite, yeah? This is the overwrite. Notice it, or sorry, the insert. It pushed everything aside. We don't want that. Control Z, although you may. But you can see what it's done. It said, hey, push that, leave that there, push all that out of the way. I want this to sit there. We don't want to do that. We're going to do this edit, which is what's called an overwrite edit. Now watch what happens. Okay, so you get my point. That's what's called a 3-point edit. And what I'm showing you is that you mark the in, you mark your out, right? and then you go into here and pick. Now you can also do it another way. Let's just Control Z that. Another way we can do it, let's just get rid of that. We can actually go, here's the in point. I want the in point to be there. We can go in here, jump to there, mark the out point. So now we've said 3 points. Point number 1 is in. Point number 2 is him laughing. That's out. Point number 3 is here. And then watch what happens when we do that. You can see that it's gone and done exactly what we want. So a 3-point edit means point number 1, point number 2, and point number 3. There's no 4 points, okay? And then boom, and there you go, right? You can just show that. Now, clearly that doesn't make any sense to do that, but you get my point. I just showed you a 3-point edit. Now, what we will do in this case, like I said, is now find the music. We drop that in here, bring it into the project. We could even have like, you know, a new bin, music. Maybe we wouldn't, we just have the music sitting there, just underneath here. We drag the music in, we've got our beat and our bopping and all the rest. We know what the music's doing, and so we edit accordingly. We start to look for those edit moments. But having said that, hopefully that gives you an idea of the process of doing your edits, marking, and why you mark. Because later on, if you were to do another cut of this video, you would certainly know, you know, where your good points are and where they're not. So that's kind of the workflow that I use, especially when the project's quite lengthy. The only other thing I would add is double check with your client absolutely as to what type of video they're looking for before you go ahead and get too passionate about your edit. And I'll tell you why. I've had situations where I've, you know, edited a video, we've spent all this time, we've color corrected it, we've gone and done it to the music and all the rest of it, and then all of a sudden the client says, you know what, that 5-minute video is too long, I just want 30 seconds. Right? So the client tells you after you've probably spent 5 or 6 hours editing and falling in love with your edit, that they turn around and go, you know what, we just want 30 seconds, we've decided. So before you get all attached to your editing, please call your client and ask them, how long do you want this video to be? And they say a minute. And you confirm via email just to make sure we're still sticking to a minute, whether you text or email, and they go, yeah, definitely make it a minute. We're just going to quickly throw a quick video on Facebook. That way you don't sit there and edit for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. Imagine editing this footage where there's 2 hours of footage and you do a 30-minute video with all this tutorial information, all the voiceover and all this other stuff, and the client turns around and goes, you know what, don't worry about the 30 minutes, just give me 30 seconds. They don't realize that you've just spent 5 hours doing it, or 6 or more. They don't realize you've done all that. So believe it or not, this client did tell me that he wants a 30-second commercial. I probably find that that's probably not as useful. I might give him a minute, but you get my point, is there was plenty of video there, and quite frankly, we've probably got more marked footage than we need. But at least we know the breadth of the marks, we know the breadth of the video choices that we have, and we'll probably just jump to, you know, a few of them. And we can already see here in the timeline that we've got about, you know, 20 seconds. So we're already pretty much getting through it all. Another thing to note as well, this is actually indicating the length of the video. And I believe there's a setting that shows that. I believe it's possibly here. It's got the time ruler numbers and work area bar. So just in case you're wondering what the work area bar is, it's this thing. What this does is it defines the work area, and it's used for when you do a final render. I've kind of got used to it, and I kind of like having it now. It's just a quick way of actually going like this. Like you might say, hey, I just want to quickly render that section of the video. You can go to sequence, render work area. Now when that work area bar is not there, then it sort of says render in and out. I like the work area bar. It works separately to the ins and outs, which incidentally, to get rid of, I just do that now, and I get rid of my ins and out. So we'll wrap this up. This is kind of now going to continue. By the time I get to the next stage of this, you'll see it all kind of edited. It'll probably be about 1 minute to 2 minutes with some cool funky music. And then by that stage, we'll probably just get through a bit of a color correction. and that will be the client getting a final render as well. If there's anything I haven't covered in this video, I'll cover it there as well. But in the meantime, cheers for watching. That was just a quick indication of how to open your project for the first time and start editing. Cheers for watching.